If you've ever read about the founding fathers and thought, oh, that could be me. Well, good news, compadre, we couldn't agree with you more. So we're about to show you how you can start your very own country, because this is Epic How To.
Epic How To.
Now, before you go off and name yourself king or queen of I'm Super Coolistan or Joe Beretta is Awesome Vania, you need to know the rules of starting your own country. It may seem counterintuitive for you to have to follow the rules when forming a nation, but these are the guidelines recognized by international organizations for you to be formally recognized as a nation. Without that, you're just another crazy person living in the woods. A new country must have three things. 1, a clearly defined territory. There doesn't seem to be any minimum size for this. The Vatican City, for instance, is only 0.2 of a square mile, or about 13 acres, which is over 100 times smaller than the island of Manhattan. 2nd, you must have a permanent population. Again, no minimums here have been set. The Pitcairn Islands now have less than 50 people living on them. 50! They can fit the entire nation's population on a school bus. Lastly, you must have a government capable of interacting with other states. This one is a little tougher to define, as you essentially need to be recognized as a nation in order to interact with other nations, but you're already a nation if you already interact with other nations, so here's hoping Portugal owes you a favor. But where are you gonna get this land? You have basically two options: claim land that has never been claimed, or take over existing territory. You might hope that you can find an island, but it has to be super isolated. According to international law, nations own the sea for the first 12 miles out from the coast, so if you're close enough to another nation, your island is already claimed. Besides, at this point, pretty much everything has been claimed as far as we know, and satellite imagery has found every last island on Earth, and someone already called dibs on all of them. Now, many people have tried to get around these laws. One eccentric millionaire, Michael Oliver, tried to create his own island nation, literally. In 1972, he started the Republic Minerva when he claimed the Minerva Reefs, which we should mention are underwater most of the time. He paid to have sand shipped in from Australia and dumped on the reefs in hopes of building them into a permanent island where he could set up his idea of a libertarian utopia. It was going swimmingly until he sent out letters to his new neighbors, who decided they didn't like where this was going. The King of Tonga proclaimed the reefs belonged to his nation, and he was backed by a conference of South Pacific states. He totes sent troops to invade the reefs and sent the crazy millionaires back to where they came from. Millionaire land. From time to time, a group of mercenaries will try to take over an island, which is something that happens. In fact, the island nation of Comoros has had 20 coup attempts since declaring independence from France in 1975. But we don't recommend that because it tends to end in a hail of bullets, and that's not good for anybody. Fun fact, the most successful attempt at creating an island micronation is Sealand. During World War II, England built several concrete fortresses in international waters as an early warning post for Nazi invasions. Some of these were left standing after the war, and in 1966, Roy Bates and his family claimed one of these fortresses for themselves. Their original plan was to broadcast a pirate radio station, but the Bates soon decided to claim the fortress under the terms of terra nullius, saying if no one else claimed it, then they would. And thus began the government of Sealand. And here's the crazy part. Because they're outside of England's territorial waters, British judges decided they have no jurisdiction over Sealand and now recognize it as its own country. The platform is only 10,000 square feet, about a fifth of a football field, so it's not much of a nation, but a nation nonetheless. You can get a passport and everything. It's crazy. So what's your best bet to find your own terra nullius? Well, there's a small stretch of desert between Egypt and Sudan claimed by neither country, mostly because it's an arid, sandy wasteland with no natural resources and no infrastructure. However, this land has recently been claimed by Jeremiah Heaton of Virginia, who is currently working on official recognition by Egypt, Sudan, and the African Union. The reason Jeremiah is creating his own nation is so that he can officially name his daughter Princess Emily. And that's adorbs. If he gets it, then that patch of dirt is officially off the table. However, there's actually a huge amount of land that remains pretty much unclaimed by any nation. It's called Marie Byrd Land, and it consists of 620,000 square miles of Antarctica. So while most of the continent has been claimed, and the US reserved the right to assert a claim later in a 1959 treaty, the land has never officially been claimed, so if you want, it's yours for the taking. We should warn you, though, that the highest temperature reached during the peak of summer is 14 degrees Fahrenheit. So you're gonna want to invest in a parka. Maybe two. So make your own flag, get some friends, and sail due south till you hit a lot of ice. Then it's just a small matter of drafting a constitution, creating an economy, and being recognized by the UN. You know, the easy stuff. We'll cover it someday. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to leave more suggestions in the comments below. As always, I'm Joe Beretta, and this has been Epic How To. Let us know what topic you guys think we should break down next in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe.